Hello, my name's Noel Kingsbury, and with my colleague Annie Guilfoyle, I run Garden Masterclass. Now, Annie and I started Garden Masterclass 6 years ago to put on live educational events in the British Isles. But with COVID, the lockdown, in April 2020, we started doing a public service broadcast. And then we've settled down to running both live events, but also with a big online content. So we do this Thursday Garden Chat once a week on a Thursday evening, 6 o'clock Western European time. And those recordings then go up on to YouTube. Now, we also do webinars. We have a webinar season that runs through from September to May. We get leading experts globally from the garden and landscape world to talk about their specialism. And of course, that's an opportunity to ask them questions. Most of those webinars are recorded and are then available through Vimeo from our website. We also put on courses. There's a course on naturalistic planting design, for example, which I do with Professor Nigel Dunnett of the University of Sheffield in Northern England. And we sometimes get involved in organising conferences. We do all sorts of things that are aimed at encouraging quality planting, quality gardening, knowledge about plants and botany, plant science, and we hope you'll join us. We have a membership scheme which gives you discounts on our webinars and live events and various other goodies, but also you can just sign up for our monthly email newsletter to keep in touch with what we're doing. We believe, and we've been told by many people, that what we do is unique. It's unique in the range and quality of people we talk to and our global reach and our diversity. So hope you enjoy this particular episode and do come back for more.
So our guest tonight is Lia Leendertz, and Lia's based in Bristol. And I'm sure, I was just chatting to Lia, I'm sure we had Lia and Mark on, oh gosh, back in the early days of lockdown. I'm absolutely sure we did, but it's all become a rather haze now.
Yes, it's ringing a vague bell with me. But
I know. But anyway, Lia, welcome. It's really lovely to see you. We're here to discuss Lia's book, the Almanac for 2024, a seasonal guide. But before that, we're just going to have a little chat about where you are, Lia, and how you got into it. So you're based in Bristol. You're horticulturally trained, aren't you? Your background's horticulture.
Yes, I studied on a course that they used to do, don't do anymore, at the Edinburgh Botanic Gardens. It was an HND in plantsmanship and horticulture, right. Yeah, which was rather lovely. Just a 2-year course. And then from that went straight into garden journalism, actually. I was quite interested even then about gardening and writing about gardening. So got a job with the RHS magazine, The Garden, as their trainee horticultural journalist, and then kind of carried on from there, really.
Yeah, and you now write for various publications, don't you? The Guardian.
Yes, right, for The Guardian sometimes, and The Telegraph sometimes. The Garden still has me back sometimes, which is rather lovely, and Gardens Illustrated, obviously gorgeous to write for, and it's very lovely.
Good. So our focus tonight is your wonderful book, The Almanac. So this is the 7th year you've been doing this. That's right?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. And so, just why did you start it? What was what got you revved up about a sort of seasonal almanac or an annual almanac? But
yes, I suppose it was a kind of mixture of a few things. One was that I was writing about gardening anyway, and food a little bit. I'd got into kind of writing about food a bit as well, and I was kind of looking, to be honest, for an idea and was wanting to do something. I love those kind of fork to fork, plate to plate books that are around the year and that sort of thing. So I think I was sort of looking for an angle, looking for a what could it be? How could I make mine different to anyone else's, and come up with a title and all of that. And I actually was thinking about titles, and I think even I'd thought of this idea about making a book that was about each month of the year. So what was special about each month of the year, and then bringing in gardening and bringing in cookery and seasonal food and all of that. And I think I'd come up with the word month and thought maybe that could be the title. And then I was sort of like, month doesn't quite, it's not very lovely. And I'm just sort of looking for words that kind of meant things like that. And I think came across the word almanac. So it kind of came sort of back to front a little bit. And then thought, oh yes, I could sort of steal that word. I don't have to make a real almanac. I can, and then started looking at what real almanacs are, and kind of fell for them a little bit. And also, so an almanac is, I should probably explain just in case people don't know, but can be really anything that sort of takes you through the year. So some almanacs are kind of about the past year. There'll be sporting almanacs that talk about, all of the who won what all through the last year, and things like that, and political almanacs that tell you everything that happened. But then there's almanacs like mine that are about the year ahead, and they were a kind of farming aid, really. It came from sort of agricultural, so they would have told you, I mean, the oldest ones are sort of like from ancient Egypt, telling you when the Nile was going to flood and things like that, the really, really ancient form of publishing. So as an kind of an aid to agriculture, really. But there's some that kind of have carried on, and some really old ones, Old Moore's Almanac, and the Old Farmer's Almanac in America, hundreds of years old. And I looked at those, and I kind of thought, this is gorgeous information. This is so lovely. You've got these tide times and moon phases and all that, but they were done in a kind of way that showed you, I think, that they sort of showed their age in a way. The Old Moore's Almanac, which is the British one, more so, I think, because it sort of has lots of adverts in it. It's done on very cheap paper. It's very flimsy and kind of, and I thought there's a space here for something really beautiful with this beautiful information. And so it sort of grew out of that, really. And I kind of took the idea to a couple of publishers, and they weren't very interested. They kind of thought it was not a very commercial idea. Lovely idea, but not very commercial, was the general feedback that I got. And so I crowdfunded the first one. And it was really funny because as soon as I started crowdfunding, it was very obvious that it kind of was commercial. People were like, oh, yes, I want this. This seems like something I would like. So that's sort of one of the ways it kind of came up. I think it had been bubbling up for me for quite a few years. And I love the idea of kind of, when I go on holiday, I will always buy the tide timetables and things like that. So I love the idea of bringing that stuff home to Bristol, where I live, and knowing about all the stuff that's happening out there, all the big cosmic stuff that's happening. So kind of came at me from all different directions, I think.
And the word almanac, is it from Greek originally, almanac? Do we know the origin of that?
I don't know if we do know the origin. I think it's not from Greek. I think, I have looked into this in the past and I've sort of forgotten it, but I think it might be a kind of Islamic word, actually.
Oh, right.
I think so. The al being, I'm a bit lost there. Don't know.
Yeah, okay.
I should know that.
I just assume Alma being possibly Greek, but anyway, and I think people shouldn't be deceived because it's in stature, it's very compact, it's quite small.
Yes.
But by goodness me, is this packed with information month by month? I mean, incredibly so. So in the early days, I mean, has it changed much from year to year? Did year one look very much like year 7 in terms of the content, or have you honed it over the years? And
this is the first one here. It's thinner, it's smaller, so it's got chunkier over the years.
Right.
But apart from that, It's quite similar in that, well, I suppose what I have is a kind of core elements every year. So I'll always include the moon phases and names for the full moons, and I'll always include sunrise and sunset times and tide times. And the sky at night and all of that, I consider it's kind of core information. And then about 50, so that's about 50%, and then the other 50% is kind of new stuff, but still kind of along similar lines, in that there'll be recipes, but obviously they're new every year, and they'll sometimes have a theme, like we've had bun of the month in the past, snack of the month for 2024, and things like that. And there'll be folk songs, but they are obviously they're different every year, and all of that. So yeah, about 50-50, kind of like this sort of core information and then new bits and bobs.
But there's a lot of information to collate. So presumably 2024 is out, it's it's here, it's published. So 2025, I assume you're already working on, I would have thought, because it must take a lot of time.
Yeah, I am. I'm in a nice kind of stage with 2025 at the moment, which is this kind of dreaming phase, and kind of, what do I want it to be? And they've all had quite a strong identity of their own, actually, in the end, because we have a different theme, and we always have a different illustrator every year. So the basics are the same, the kind of furniture is the same, and then around it we kind of dress it slightly different. So we decided right from the first year to have a different illustrator every year, to kind of make it feel different, but also collectible, and also to kind of have this lovely experience that I have every year now of kind of commissioning an artist and saying, if you had an almanac to illustrate, what would you do? How would you do it? And that's been a really gorgeous part of it, actually. Really lovely. So so at the moment I'm in this, I've got an idea for the theme, so I always have a theme for each one. And it has come to me, it sounds like a sort of, it has arrived with quite a strong visual idea of how I want it to look visually, which is unusual, actually. That has happened once or twice. Once it happened with this one, which is 2021. The theme was all about kind of travel and migration and things like that, and pilgrimage and things like that. And what I wanted right from the start was an artist who was good at maps. So for this one we had Helen Can, who's an amazing, beautiful map maker, and she did I'm just trying to look for a quick one to show you. Of course I picked a month where I can't find it.
Maps.
What have I done? Here we go. So this was humpback whale migration. There you see she did beautiful maps. But so this next one, 2025, has a very different and a very strong visual idea. So that's really lovely. But I'm in this funny situation of like having I know how I want the artist to look before I found the artist, which is the wrong way. It's not usually that way around. So I'm looking for artists that fit my kind of idea, but I've found a couple that I'm
and so year one you crowdfunded, so you self-published basically.
Yes, it's kind of, I did it via Unbound, and that it's a sort of half and half. So they are half crowdfunding, half publishers. So actually, once you've raised the money, they do switch into being quite a traditional publisher. And they were great. And actually, it was them who I had imagined quite a big book, and it was them who said, no, let's make it really small. And I think it was a really good decision to make it. Really
that's interesting. And then because it's now Gaia, but that's part of Octopus, is it? Is that right? So did Octopus then suddenly come out of the water and say, we'll do it now because it's been successful? So
well, I hadn't actually approached them, and they swear that if I had, they would have taken it on. I don't know.
So from the second edition, that it's been with Octopus.
I did. It just I considered sticking with Unbound, but the problem is that the actual crowdfunding process is itself kind of a full-time job. Like when I did it, I'd imagined, I don't know what I'd imagined, but it was almost like it was 3 months of basically full-time work, trying to pester everybody you've ever met and their auntie to come and buy it. And that in itself was quite hard going, and the idea of doing that year after year was sort of like,
I mean, you've got enough work on your plate. But obviously, as the author, I mean, it's great that you've got a say over the illustrator and how the book looks. I mean, it's wonderful that, you know, the whole thing is, you know, that's lovely that the publishers let you kind of take on board that.
They've been really, yes, I mean, it's always just sort of been like that. And I think perhaps because I do come to them with a fairly strong idea each year, and I have always had quite good ideas about how to, I mean, all what they have said is, so the first time that I had a theme was, I thought it was kind of by accident. I thought, oh, I can concentrate on the moon and names for the full moons and things like that, and do a whole issue about the moons, and hadn't really actually considered that this is what I did now. I have a theme every year. And the year after, my publisher said, okay, so what's the theme for this year? And I went, oh, I don't know if I'll have one. And she said, yes, yes, you will. So that's about, you know, that's about as strong as it's got in terms of
no, that's
the rest. I get almost complete creative freedom. Actually, it's really,
that's great, isn't it? That's wonderful. And does it, I mean, does it take up a lot of your time? I mean, is it a really big chunk of your year, you know, the writing of it, or have
well, it varies. It has kind of different phases. There is a spell when that's downtime. So right now is the kind of preparation for writing, I would say. So I'm doing all of the kind of backroom stuff. So that means like getting all the data in. I have various sources where I get the data from, but I have to apply for it every year, and I have to make sure everybody's happy for me to keep using it. And I have to apply for licenses from various places, and it's just so dull, and it drives me mad every year. And somehow I always seem to slightly forget and do, you know, all of that. And I also have to, because I don't write it all myself anymore. I did at the start, and now I have various people that help me. So because I like it to all kind of weave in and out of each other, I like things to echo each other across the month. I need to do all of the sort of planning quite much earlier now than I used to, because I used to sort of, as I was writing it, go, oh, I could throw that in. And it's like, no, you know, people need to know what they're writing now. So, you know, I've got Kate Bradbury, for instance, she's doing the nature part of it. I have Louise Press, who's doing meditations, and I have Beth Al-Rikby, who helps.
Oh, I know Beth.
Do you?
I've eaten her food.
Well, she tests. I tend to come up with the recipe ideas, but then she will go and test and develop them and come back. So I need to. So I'm in that phase at the moment. Then from kind of Christmas onwards, for about 3 months, I have very intensive writing time. So hopefully by then, touch wood, everything is kind of in place by then. I've got a kind of structure. I know who's doing what, and I've commissioned everything, including and the folk songs, of course. I have to commission those now as well. Those start to come in between sort of January and April, and then in April it's written, it goes off, but then there's this endless kind of fiddling and messing about, and in the meantime you're talking with the illustrator and all of that. So that's really, at that point, the illustrator kind of kicks in properly. Then there's kind of all the proofreading, blah blah blah, and then there's a bit of a lull over the summer, and then it comes out in September, and then it will process again.
And then you start again. So let's just give people an idea of what the sort of headings are for each month. So what each month contains. And then we can pick out a few. I mean, I've got a few little bits I'd like to talk about. I'm sure you have. But so within each month, the sections and the information, obviously for 2024, because you said it varies. So what do people get for each month?
I'll have to look. Hold on a second. So I always do a kind of introductory. We start off with. Hold on a sec. always a beautiful kind of seasonal illustration.
Yeah, so I was just holding up February. Oh, yeah.
And important dates for every month. So sort of traditional ones, but also bank holidays, and even I put in a couple of sporting things like, you know, the big ones like Wimbledon, World Cup and World Cup final and things like that you might want to know. An introduction where I get to sort of wax poetic a bit about the month, and I quite enjoy doing those. So for this one, then I've done a whole page on garden and weather folklore, which was really fun to do, actually.
Yeah.
Because it was fun to kind of do that. That's the sort of thing that would have been a part of the original almanacs, would have used kind of weather folklore to predict the weather and things like that. So that it was really fun to look at those, and actually surprisingly how many of them do reflect, you know, real science. You know, there's lots of kind of ways in which you know, they do come true. I suppose that's how they've
so the garden and weather folklore, is that in every year, or is that particularly for 2020?
No, that was for 2024, because the theme for 2024 is the garden. I decided about gardening, so it is a particularly gardeny one, which was rather lovely. But you're right, in a way it ought to be in every year a little bit. I don't know how to think about it.
But then the books can get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yes. How many pages will they let me have?
Exactly. And then you go on to the sea, and
the sea. We have 2 pages there. So this is like what do we have? Average sea temperatures around the coast of Britain and Ireland, and spring tides and neap tides. And then this is a tide timetable for Dover, and I give a method for working out the tides all around the coast based on Dover. There. Then the next page is the sky, and I do the sky at night, which I think, I don't know, it feels to me like it's kind of, this is the core of what the almanac's all about, really. A lot of people want to know that stuff, and it's rather lovely to be told when there's going to be meteor showers and when you can be able to see particular planets, and all of that thing is rather lovely. And what's nice about it, of course, is it's some people, although the almanac is based on the UK and Ireland, people do buy it around the world, particularly North America. People do buy it, and of course this stuff works for North America too, because that's quite nice. And sunrise and sunset there, and a nice little table.
And moonrise and moonset, obviously.
Next page is moon phases. There. And then meditations. This is a new one for this year.
Oh, that's a new one. So I noticed that you've got this is written by someone called Louise Press. So tell us a little bit about who Louise is, and kind of what we get from the meditations. I mean, what's the sort of brief for that?
Well, Louise is somebody who I met. I go to sound very hippie and very woo. And she has a yurt of her own near Bath, and I go once a month to a women's circle there. And she, just right from the first time I went, I just thought she was absolutely fantastic. And she talks to us about the seasons. So obviously I love all that, and about, you know, and how do I put this, kind of about the energy of the seasons, I suppose. And she also talks a bit about the moon and what sign it is in and what that means, things like that. Now, I don't really know about any of that stuff, and I have and I don't really believe in it. And I've kind of avoided it on previous almanacs because I sort of didn't want to go too much down that. But I just thought that the way that she goes about it is so just helpful, really. It's just nice. It kind of almost like, for me, it's sort of like gives you one thing to concentrate on. You know what I mean? It's sort of like, okay, you know, you could be doing self-improvement, and you could be looking after trying to clear your house up, or you could be going after something kind of career-wise, and you could be concentrating on family, she'll give you one thing to kind of concentrate on, if you see what I mean. She sort of focuses your mind.
I
and
see for
says,
February,
okay.
February, she's saying where we might be able to shift old habits and make space for new. You know, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it all sort of ties in, I think, with the kind of energies of the month. So right now, kind of October going into November time, she's talking a lot about kind of I love that she does this kind of thing about like shedding, like being like the trees and kind of shedding anything that's kind of extraneous, anything you don't need, just, you know, no big deal, just sort of let things go. And kind of I think sort of she talks a lot about, and I've got more and more interested in this idea of the year of human beings having a cycle, rather than us being, you know, constantly on, which we are. You know, we're all working hard and we're all trying to pay the bills, and we just push. And I think what she's talked about, and what I've sort of been interested in for a couple of years, is kind of partly the idea of human beings admitting that we're mammals, and admitting that we need to have some quiet times, and actually we're going into that time now, and we need to just sort of drop some stuff, drop a few things, let a few things go, and kind of actually cherish this kind of darker, quieter time, and use it as can be a really cozy, creative time. And that sort of comes back, I suppose, to part of what's become the kind of mission, I suppose, of the Almanac, is about appreciating each moment of the year for what it is, and not kind of wishing for summer all the time, or wishing for spring, and you know, concentrating always on those. It's like, okay, well, it is dark and it is cold, and what can be good about that, and what can be magical about that? So for me, bringing her in just slightly kind of, it's just really nice to be able to bring that in a quite a formed way, as she does. Yes, it is the most sort of hippie that the Almanac has been so far, but I suppose it was always going to be a bit hippie, wasn't it?
and then you know, each month has a making space, and I'm looking at February, so making a space for February. Is this also by Louise, or is this back to you?
No, this is me. I wrote.
All right, okay. And I just thought this was lovely, this sort of focusing on, I just love the title, making a space for February. It's like, you know, embrace that month. So is this a speciality for this year, or is this something that happens every year?
This again was new for this year, so it's just another kind of, I'm always suppose looking for different ways of kind of finding your way into the month, and finding a different way of sort of noticing where you are and enjoying the moment where you are. So the idea, I suppose, behind this bit was kind of like the nature tables that you used to make in you know, in infant school, and you'd gather your pine cones and your bits and bobs. So the idea really to create a little space where you can do that every year, every month, sorry, and also maybe, you know, light some candles, have a little bit of a you know, particularly in winter and autumn, have a bit of a quiet moment, just thinking about where we are, and you know, taking stock of where we are and appreciating. And that would just change so beautifully over the year. You know, if in February you start to get some bulbs coming through, and March have some daffodils there, and all of that.
And that's a lovely thing to do with children as well, isn't it?
Yes, quite.
That's, you know, that then you can start to, like, it becomes an activity with the family. And then with gardens, you've in February here, you've got gardening by the moon. Which, now that's a really interesting topic. And so again, you know, what's your sort of thoughts on this? Because, you know, there's some very strong principles here, and you know, it does all make sense, and it does stack up. This, you know, if the moon can control the tides, then the moon can control what happens in the ground. You know,
again, it's one that I was sort of undenied about for a while. When it was a really funny thing, was that when it came actually from the crowdfunding, and I when I was doing the crowdfunding, I think as part of the Unbound thing, you make a little film and you say what you're going to do and what's going to be in it. And I never mentioned gardening by the moon. Just didn't mention it. Didn't even really consider it, because I was trying, I suppose, to separate off from this, you know, to make mine a bit different to these older ones that have quite a heavy reliance on sort of predictions and stuff like that. So, you know, no, the scientific stuff is beautiful enough. You know, we don't need necessarily all of that. So I didn't particularly consider doing Gardening by the Moon. And then so many people, when they were replying to me putting this out there, said, "Oh, fantastic, I can't wait to get the Gardening by the Moon dates." I didn't actually say I was going to do that. And then it would come up again, and it would come up again. And eventually I thought, I think people quite want Gardening by the Moon dates. How I've put it in, because I know there's strong feelings either way, aren't there? You know, there's some people think it's a load of codswallop, and some people, you know, really believe in it. And so they're there. And I do arrange gardening jobs, you know, by their dates. But I also would just say, you know, if you don't believe in this, if you're a cynic, these are just the gardening jobs you do this year, this month, any time. So, you know, they're there if you want them. So I'm not particular. Do you know, I would do it myself if I was a bit more organized, but I'm not actually organized enough to make sure that I'm doing the right thing at the right time. So every now and then I'll remember and I'll check and it's the right time and I'll do it. To be honest, no, I don't particularly do it myself.
And then we go into garden craft, which again, it's a sort of an activity, isn't it? It's a bit like the making space. So each month gives you a craft, and I see February is snow lanterns, which is a really lovely thing to do. So again, this is a sort of a nice thing, and I see one for February, that the snow lantern is a Swedish tradition. So you are going you know, away from the UK and from the British Isles in terms of some of the recipes and some of the, you know, I kind of right from the start decided that I wanted to make it, well, my initial idea was you know, early on I brought in a lot of recipes that were from I didn't want it to just be kind of traditional British recipes. I wanted it to be about how everybody who lives in the UK and Ireland celebrates the year. So we would have celebratory recipes for Holi and for Eid and, you know, for all the rest. So it's like, you know, just a kind of, to kind of just reach out a tiny bit and say, you know, obviously it's everybody's year and actually it makes it really, it's a part of what is exciting about living in the UK is, you know, on Eid, if I walk down to the bottom of my road, we're 2 minutes away, you absolutely know it's Eid, you know, there is no avoiding it. It's, you know, there's people out, there's families out pushing their prams, there's kids enjoying, you know, and all of that. So I think that's just a really lovely part of, and it's just another thing that makes each month different to the next, makes each different month special. So yeah, I have tried to sort of bring in everything I could think of that that makes each month different. And yes, and also just, you know, looking to other communities as well and to other countries for, you know, how do you mark the year? And I love the snow lanterns one. I just think it's so gorgeous. If we do get a bit of snow, what a lovely thing to do. To make a snow lantern to welcome people to your house on a snowy day. It's gorgeous. And then it's nature. So garden wildlife in February. I have February open, but obviously this is every month. There's a garden. And so is this what Kate Bradbury is doing?
Kate Bradbury has written this, who's obviously a wonderful garden writer and really knows her stuff. So this is the first year that she has written them. I've always written them in the past, which has been great and fine. But for me, I have to do a lot of research and a lot of digging around. And for her, you know, she's sort of, this is her bread and butter. This is what she knows and is her passion. So I thought it's just nice, I think, also to bring in other voices. And someone like Kate is so great at all that and so passionate about wildlife and things like that. So she's going to be writing again in 2025.
Oh, great. I love her first line for February. It says, it might not seem like it, but February is the month when hormones in garden birds start to rage. And breeding activity steps up another gear. So it's, you know, it's lovely. And then it's the kitchen, so cooking from the garden in February and ideas of eating from the garden this month. So again, that's lovely to have those sort of seasonal what should be available. And I guess also it's making people think about what they should, if they're not growing, but what they should be looking out for and buying seasonal
and the
vegetables and fruit.
greengrocers and
Yeah,
all of
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then it takes me to my first bookmark, which is snack of the month.
Ah.
I love the fact you've got, and for well, there's a couple of snacks in February, but I was drawn to plum shuttles for Valentine's Day. So tell us about those. That just the name is brilliant. Plum shuttles.
Yeah, so they are an old, this is an old English recipe, and they plum actually used to mean raisins, or dried grapes of whatever kind, rather than plums. So it's not plums.
Yes,
a kind of a little kind of dumplingy kind of, well, basically the shape of a weaving shuttle. So it's from the time when people would have had they would have done weaving at home on hand looms, and they would have used these shuttles. So that's the shape of them, a sort of lozengey kind of shape, made with not plums but with raisins in, and they were given to sweethearts on Valentine's Day, so that's why they made it into February. So I'm always kind of looking for recipes that are attached to particular days of the month to kind of and it's lovely because things like that have almost completely died out, and then I get people on Instagram sending me pictures of their well, I hope I will anyway, plum shuttles, and sort of done a little bit of reviving of a thing, which feels really nice. And then
we're into folk songs now. This is the one for February is Green Grows the Laurel, traditional traditional arrangement by Richard Barnard. So you said earlier on that you commission folk songs. So do you commission new folk songs as well as traditional folk songs then?
Well, not strict. Well, so Richard, oh gosh, sorry. Dog keeps getting very excited. Richard, I will sort of throw either, sometimes I will go through and choose a load of folk songs and sort of throw them at Richard, and he'll work them out. This time actually I threw the theme at him because I thought, well, that's quite a good one he could get hold of. So I said, can you find a song that relates to each month of the year that is about gardens? So they're all set in gardens, or they're about flowers or whatever. So he goes off and does that. So generally he's trying to find kind of the most traditional version, trying to find original tunes and all of that. And then in a few places he's actually a composer, so he's very good at all this. Bristol based, as it happens. And there have been a few places where and I think, which one is it, there's one or two, I think, in this one where he has found the words but not been able to find a tune. So then with using his knowledge of the era and all that, he's actually made a tune that fits. And we've sailed that, where it's not a proper, that you say. So in a way, and also he sets the music himself so that it's ours, so that we're not sort of copying anybody else's. And the other way around as well, he has actually written a few words in some places where we've got an old tune and an incomplete set of lyrics. He's also filled in with words, again, kind of using his knowledge of the era and all of that. So actually there's a little bit of kind of making up folk songs going on. Generally though, we're aiming for as proper as we can get in terms of what we can find.
And then the final page for each month is, well, these garden specials. So we're focusing here on plants that are happening and at that time of year. And you've got for February spring nectar rich plants and focusing on some of those. So that's part of the sort of special garden theme for each of the months of the year.
Yes. It was originally meant to be in March, actually, and then it's interesting that you say you think it was February, because the idea is actually that's sort of spring. That's like just before March. We're saying this is the whole of spring. So so the idea was that we would have pollen-rich plants for every season, so that you can have pollen in your garden all through the year, hopefully. Plant all these.
So all the things we've covered basically in the last 5 minutes, 10 minutes or so, that's sort of everything that is contained within each month, and obviously it varies from month to month, which is wonderful. So there's so much information. So I mean, with compiling the information over the year, do you find that there are certain months that are quite thin on, content, or are you sort of overwhelmed with stuff? How does it pan out? Does each year differ? Is like, I don't know, is March always a tricky month, or?
No, I'll tell you, there are some months that are amazing. And that includes actually where we are now. October, November is very rich in folklore and songs and recipes. All of the time, all Hallowmas is essentially a big kind of, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of stories and a lot of stuff, and kind of lots of kind of fortune tellery stuff, and all of this kind of stuff is really rich. Christmas obviously is just massive and could be big. And then the other big one is May. Everything around May Day. I could write entire almanacs about May every year. It's got recipes, it's got songs, it's got so many songs.
Really? So it's those kind of turn of the season.
It is turning of the seasons, and Christmas obviously big important one. And then the down months, the big down month is July, actually.
Oh, interesting.
July is really quiet, and the reason is that actually July would have been in our kind of medieval kind of times, would have been a very busy time, would have been haymaking and harvesting, and lots of people would have been really busy. So there aren't really any big folk festivals. There wouldn't have been fetes, there wouldn't have been things happening, because people were just too busy. So they do tend to, like, May Day falls between the ploughing and the haymaking, essentially. So the big dates tend to fall between the big agricultural jobs.
Interesting.
July is a tough one every year.
Really?
And if you look at the important dates for July, that's very short as well. It's really funny. Carried on. There's quite a few sporting things happening. That's starting to pick up. But in terms of traditional stuff, March as well, actually March is very busy. So March, for important dates, I always have way too many for March, and I have to prune a load because everybody's celebrating spring. There's lots of spring celebrations, and there's the equinox to mark, all of that stuff. But July.
Well, isn't that funny? Because the thing that struck me, I was looking through, and it was the dog days, which is in July.
That's July.
The hottest, muggiest days of the summer, between mid-July and mid-August. And the name comes from the heliacal, is that right?
Heliacal, I think.
Heliacal rising of Sirius, the dog star, and the brightest star in the sky. So it's sort of, the dog days. And interesting, isn't it, that I suppose one assumes that dog days are just really hot days where the dog is flopped on the floor under a shrub in the garden or under the table.
No, it's because Sirius is the great dog, is the dog.
Actually to do with the sky. So
and it's interesting that looking at those the traditions around the dog days from the Mediterranean and Britain. In the Mediterranean, it is all about tempers and being too hot and all that. Whereas in Britain, it's sort of like, oh, let's hope that we have some nice dry weather during this time. We quite like the dog days, thanks. Exactly. Right by us. But in the Mediterranean, it's like, oof, that's the really tough.
And then September, there was quite a focus on onions and onion skins. And I love the fact that September in the garden, onion skins turn papery and their shoots grow yellow, which announces harvest time. And then on the opposite page, garden and weather folklore, check your onion skins as you harvest them to tell if the coming winter is going to be harsh. And that lovely little saying, onion skin thin, a mild winter coming in. Onion skin thick and tough, coming winter cold and rough.
It's lovely, isn't it? And that's a lovely one where there is an actual scientific explanation for it. So I'm sort of hunting for it now to make sure I get my El Niñas and my La Niñas the right way round. But it's because, hang on, here we go. It's thought this folklore could be linked to La Nina years because which is the cold counterpart. We know more about El Nino. It's characterized by a dry summer or a summer drought, which leads to thickened skins. But it's a dry summer and then followed by a cold winter is what happens in La Nina years. So the thickened skins would come about with the hot, dry summer. So it's like, oh, well, that's, that was noticed a very long time ago. Which is rather lovely.
It's amazing. And then obviously what's just about around the corner, which is the beginning of November, not long off really. Samhain on the 1st of November was long considered the beginning of winter, after a great feast thrown on the 31st of October to say a final farewell to any remnants of summer. And there's a lovely saying, isn't it? Ice in November to bear a duck, nothing after but mud and muck. On the 1st of November, if the weather hold clear, an end to what sowing you do this year. That's great, isn't it?
So there's so it's Samhain is how you say that.
Samhain. Say it again.
Samhain.
Samhain.
And it was this kind of great celebration of the end of summer, the beginning of winter, the end of the harvest, all of this sort of thing. So really kind of putting the year away. And very much the predecessor of Halloween, and all of that sort of stuff, because there's this kind of theme generally about these moments where the season is changing, where you're moving from one season to the next. That is about spirits being abroad. Basically, these are the moments when kind of spirits were thought to be about a bit more. So at this moment, when you were moving from very much the end of summer and into winter, it was thought, you would avoid graveyards and things like that. And then people did start to in order to see off the spirits, people from your village would dress up and dress up as the spirits, and they would bang things and go out and bang stuff, and that kind of developed into a sort of mumming kind of thing. They were mummers, which developed into trick-or-treating essentially. In kind of Scotland and Ireland in particular, and then people from Scotland and Ireland who migrated to America, obviously took it to America, it became huge in America, and then it kind of got imported back to England via I've read someone say like E.T. was like the film E.T. was like when we first all went, oh, that looks like and we started doing it too, so it kind of went from Scotland and Ireland over to America and then back.
Amazing.
Samhain tradition originally.
Wonderful. I don't know if anyone has any questions for Lia. Please do quickly write them into the chat box, but the most important question is, where can people buy the book and how can they order?
You can find it in lots of bookshops, happily, lots and lots of bookshops do sell it. Waterstones usually has it, and the other big ones, and then lots of independents, and yes, you can find it on Amazon and Boo and all of that as well, so it's quite easy to track down, I think. Great.
In fact, I saw it. I was at the Yorkshire Sculpture Park about a week and a half ago, and I saw it on the shelves in their bookstore at the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, which was really nice to see amongst all the art books. So it really stood out, and it was such a beautiful cover.
Well, watch out, because there is a couple of copycats around this year. There always is.
This was definitely your book. We've got a question from Rachel, fascinating about dog days, and I'm just trying to we'll definitely be looking for a copy. So yes, Rachel. So it is the Almanac, a seasonal guide to 2024, Lia Leendertz, and it's published by Octopus, is Gaia
is part of Octopus,
so brilliant. So just it is, and we'll make just a wonderful present, because it's so nice, I think, to have these books that you can sort of read about the month ahead. You know, you've got something, you don't necessarily have to sit down and read in one go. You can just read, right, this is the turning of the month, what's coming up, what's happening. And it's lovely to have by the bed, isn't it? Just think,
yes, lots of people do make a kind of a little tradition of it in itself, of like on the first of the month, sit down with a nice cup of coffee and have a little read and look ahead to the month ahead, which has been really gorgeous. It's absolutely what I hoped for when I first made it. And it's really what's happened, you know, people do kind of keep it there and have it as a little part of their month.
And what else is occupying your time just before we say cheerio? I mean, what other things are you working on? What's on your work agenda at the moment?
So I do a podcast once a month with Fern, who are a perfume maker, organic perfume maker, and that is called As the Season Turns, and that comes out on the first of the month as well. So it's a kind of companion piece, I suppose.
Oh, right,
all about it is all about the month ahead. So it's kind of it's different stuff. Some of it's just a little bit of overlap, but mostly it's kind of new stuff about the month ahead. So it's just quite short. It's half an hour. You take with you on a little walk or
lovely,
that. I'm writing a Substack now, which is a weekly newsletter. So that's called Lia's Living Almanac, and that is kind of mostly we do a kind. It's got a really lovely community, and mostly we do a kind of sort of checking in on the week. You know, it's sort of we do. I will look for things that I noticed that are particular to the week this week, and you know what makes this week different to any other week of the year, and then people kind of reply with theirs, and then we put together, it's really lovely actually, it becomes a sort of little seasonal poem. It's really sweet that we put together each week, and it's rather gorgeous. So yes, it can come and join me on that, and bits of garden writing and garden visiting and stuff like that. So.
Fantastic. Well, it is absolutely beautiful, and as I said to everybody, it will make a fantastic Christmas present, because it's such a lovely thing that people can have, and I think the size is great, because you can travel with it too, can't you? Yes. If you're heading off, and it's not too big, and you can just put it in your pocket almost, but it's so packed full of information, and it's just a delight. And I think that, just having that lovely monthly, it's sort of treat, isn't it, to have something to read each month where you just, you can extract bits of it. And
I hope so. And I think there's little ways in for everyone. If you can't sort of do one thing, you can do another. You can, if you don't like looking at the sky, you can bake a cake, or you can, whatever. So
sing a folk song.
You sing a folk song, exactly.
Yeah. No, I haven't said to Lia that she has to sing a folk song, because I know Lia does sing, but I thought I'd let her off that tonight.
Thank you.
Oh, it's been really lovely chatting to you, Lia. Thank you so much, and good luck with next year's, because not next year's, 2025, obviously. And the planning of that. So very exciting, and I'm sure people will now be looking for copies, but also finding you on Substack as well, and your podcast, which is lovely to have that monthly information. So thank you very much indeed. It's been lovely chatting to you.
Thank you for having me, Annie.
It's a pleasure. And thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. All the best. Okay, bye-bye. Bye.